Only anyway.
Okay, Dave. The first 10 or so minutes were quite one-sided. Play tended to be in favour of Heidelberg West. For the first 10 to 12 minutes, the play was almost entirely in the half of Heidelberg West, and the ball was either in contested play or a Heidelberg West player was kicking to the goals. In that period, West Heidelberg scored 1 goal free. Play tended to be quite slow and the movement of the ball was low. But then, in the second half of the quarter, the play started to speed up. Kicking started to become longer and there were more opportunities for marking. During that time, play started to become a lot more even. There was a period where Reservoir had the possession of the ball and the ball was in their half for some time, and they were able to get 1 goal during that period, but then Heidelberg also were able to get another goal and another behind before the end of the quarter. So in the end, the first half was definitely dominated by West Heidelberg, where they scored 9 points, but then it was pretty much even in the second half with 1 goal apiece, and then there was that 1 extra behind to Heidelberg West just at the very end on the siren. There was a little moment of controversy at the siren because the Heidelberg West player had taken the mark and had swung around to take the kick when the siren went, and the umpire allowed a kick on the mark after the siren, even though technically the player had played on. That's what the Reservoir players cried, but the umpire permitted it. on the grounds that the player would have done something different if they hadn't have heard the siren. You would have to think that Reservoir are most going to be displeased with their performance in terms of the defence. In terms of basic errors, bumbling the ball, not taking clean marks, sometimes handballing it and it doesn't go directly to the person you're trying to handball it to. In terms of the little mistakes, Reservoir's defence would be most displeased, and there would be a lot of opportunity for improvement in that area. They definitely didn't put up a good enough performance, and the fact that they conceded 1 goal free during that period is indicative of just how much they were not in proper position to defend against the attack of Heidelberg West. Although you might say that the same could be said of the Heidelberg West attack, because during their period where the play was in their favour, they scored 1 goal free, and considering how many opportunities they had, that's pretty low. So we are now at half-time in the match, and in many ways the game has broken out. So we are currently at half-time in the match, and Heidelberg West are far in the lead. They are 7-5-47 to Reservoir's 2-1-13. So it is quite a heavy lead for Heidelberg West, bordering on 6 goals. Now, the first thing that needs to be said is that Heidelberg West's execution increased dramatically. Keep in mind that in the first quarter they scored just the 1 goal and conceded and scored a few behinds, and at least 2 of those behinds that they scored in the first quarter were through situations where they should have scored a goal but they failed to through not doing the right thing. And in this second quarter they were able to score a number of goals. In fact, every time they had an opportunity in front of the goals, they pretty much did the right job and were able to kick the goals. And so that sort of excellent execution and assurance of getting the job done was definitely a hallmark of their performance. The second thing that needs to be said about Heidelberg West's performance is actually getting the ball into their attacking 50. So it's not just about kicking the goal when you actually have a chance of kicking at the goals, but it's also about getting the ball into your attacking 50 so that you can have an opportunity to do such kicking. And here, the centre fielders in the flanks and the pockets for Heidelberg West did an extraordinary job. Through a series of tactical manoeuvres and getting the angles right and getting the execution right and making sure there's plenty of cooperation, they were able to get the ball into their attacking 50 on a regular basis through the second quarter, and that meant that their attacking kickers could have plenty of opportunities to kick a goal. So there was a series of occasions where the ball was in the middle of the ground and it was through the Heidelberg West fielders, centres, that they were able to get the ball into their attacking 50 in very quick time so that there was an opportunity to score. And that makes their performance stand out. As far as the play is concerned, we have been seeing some very fast football. The ball has been moving a lot faster lately. The kicking is of quite a long distance, and there's a constant need for moving the ball forwards. Often contested possessions go to ground, which results in the players scrambling to grab the ball and often handball it to each other. And despite that, the ball has not been slowed up to the point where it's dragging. Rather, someone has been able to get hold of the ball and they kick it away in one direction or another. So the play has remained very fast throughout this second quarter, and it seems only the first half of the first quarter was where the play was slow. So things are moving very fast. Certainly in terms of Heidelberg West's lead, things have gotten out of hand, because at quarter time, with the lead only less than 10, it certainly wasn't out of hand. It wasn't something that they couldn't have dealt with. It's certainly something that Reservoir wouldn't have panicked over. But going from a deficit of less than 10 to a deficit of more than 30 is quite something to be concerned about, and definitely Reservoir will need to think of some new ways of playing if they're going to do something in the second half. So, we are at three-quarter time. Heidelberg West are 10-10-70, and Reservoir are 3-2-20. The deficit has blown out from being in the low 30s at halftime to now being 50. And so there has been a gradual, regular increase of the lead for Heidelberg West across the match. It started off being about 10, then it became about 30, and now it is 50. So with each passing quarter, Heidelberg West continue to score at least 3 extra goals than their opponents. Now, throughout the first half of this third quarter, you'd have to say that Reservoir did a improvement, particularly of their defensive play. The number of times that they were able to spoil a Heidelberg West play and interfere with it, smother it, stop it from being a scoring opportunity was quite admirable. And the number of goals that Heidelberg West scored in the first half of that quarter was low, and Reservoir were able to get one themselves. And so the lead was still only about 40. But then in the last half of the quarter, coming towards the last 5 minutes, we saw 2 extra goals scored by Heidelberg West, which is what blew the score out from the from the high 30s to 50. And that has really changed the dynamic of the game now. The lead is so large that, and the time remaining is so small, that it looks without doubt that Heidelberg West will be going on to the grand final next week, not Reservoir. One of the things to be hopeful about is the fact that the mistakes, the little errors, the fumblings, the bumblings, the dropped marks, the kicks that don't quite reach their target and miss were less for Reservoir in this quarter than in the previous half. It seems as though, in terms of executing their plays and getting the job done in the way and the fashion that they want, they are improving, but it is certainly not enough to actually get to a stage where they are actually dominating over Heidelberg West. The fact of the matter is that Heidelberg West are playing at a superior level, so when Reservoir can cut out those mistakes and actually put up proper execution of their strategies, they can compete with Heidelberg West, but they can't dominate. So with that fact in mind, it is hard to see how Heidelberg West won't just be able to maintain their lead, if not increase it. So the idea of Reservoir launching some sort of final quarter counterattack seems rather low, but considering how well they've been able to hold up things throughout parts of the second and third quarters, they could take some solace if they are able to reduce the deficit to something like 40 or 30, then at least they have put up a much better and much more competent performance than what they have at times during this match. So the game is over. Heidelberg West 14-13 97 to Reservoir 7-4 46. So the margin was 51 points. That meant that the two teams ended up on even money in the final quarter. So the lead did not change effectively in that final quarter. And what is most significant is that the attacking play from Heidelberg West was most stifled by Reservoir's defence, which meant that they couldn't blow out the lead into something in the 70s or the 80s. The number of opportunities they had to score goals was limited to only a few opportunities in the final 5 minutes, just at the very end. So, to the furthest extent, Reservoir were able to hold their own in the final quarter, and in fact they were able to score a couple of really handsome looking goals which boosted their score up to 46, which was much higher than what it was looking to be. So all in all, there were some good performances by Reservoir in that final quarter that meant that they were able to put up at least a competent looking performance throughout those periods of play. But in the end, it has to be said that in terms of who got to win this match, Heidelberg West were way in superior. They had better plays in order to advance the ball up the field. They had better opportunities and better methods of getting the ball into attacking 50. And then when it came to actually executing, they were able to get enough of the goals scored that they could put on a sizable total. So they got 28 scoring opportunities to Reservoir's 12. So more than double the scoring opportunities went to Heidelberg West. And that is a clear indication of just how much they were able to control periods of this game. So a very sizable victory for them. And they will go on to the grand final next week. Reservoir had a good season, but it's all over now.
Yes, Nice.